Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Probably the most famous or best known chronograph is the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona. The Daytona is usually associated with famous people more so than the movement itself. The Daytona went through, I think, 3 generations of chronographs. The first one was a Valjoux movement, and then the next generation was an El Primero from that been developed by Zenith. And finally, they developed a caliber called the 4130. The current one is the 4131, which I guess would be the newest generation. So what I thought is that that's interesting. I mean, I know how much people really love Rolexes, and for a chronograph, that makes sense that may be the first one that comes to mind. But I thought, well, maybe we should look at some other ones. Okay, in other words, this is why this video is called Instead of a Daytona. It's not saying anything bad about Daytona. It's just looking at some alternatives. Now, probably the most radical difference in any chronograph is the Agograph. This was developed by Jean-Marc Viderec. One of the first watches that came out with it was a company called Singer. Singer makes cars, sort of specialized cars, and their watches are part of something that's called Singer Reimagined. And the very first one, the Track One Launch Edition, had if you look at the dial on it, it doesn't have those little subdials. It simply has sort of different chapter rings, I guess, or different tracks around it for the chronograph work. It has pushers at 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and then the winders down around 4. And so it was a very different, very revolutionary movement, and it's one that chronograph connoisseurs prefer. Now, let me say right off, I'm not a big fan of chronographs. I got nothing against them, the movements per se. They just generally have things that I don't use too much. The only chronograph I still have is this Beauvais Monorattrapante, and so it's you're not listening to somebody who is like, I'm a great chronograph expert, but I know about different chronographs and so because I'm not sort of married to any one of them, I sort of like to look at the different ones. Now, the more recent version of using the Agograph movement was by H. Moser, the Streamliner flyback chronograph. This watch is to me the closest thing that I could want for a chronograph. It's very clean. You have a red and a white second hand that are used for chronograph seconds, and the other one is used for the regular timing seconds. And it doesn't have an hour timer on it because, and I think is a good thing. If you're doing timing, you can simply see where the hour hand is and go from there. It's the movement is called the HMC, H. Moser and Company 907, and so it takes the Agograph, basic Agograph chronograph, and then works it in with their own movement they have a company called Precision Engineering that puts it together, and they work with Agenor. In fact, H. Moser bought a share of Agograph. Now, another famous one is the Breitling Navtimer B01 chronograph. Now, this particular one is a chronograph that was sort of with pilots in mind. When I used to fly, we'd go to the HMO and always have Breitlings advertised. And this one has a circular slide rule. Back in the day, we would have these big circular slide rules for figuring things out in terms of wind direction and so forth. This has been largely put aside by all of the much more accurate and easier to use and read electronics that they have. But the Breitling Navtimer with the B01 is the movement. That's a true in-house Breitling movement. Now, another famous one is the El Primero by Zenith. Now, this one that I have here is one of the early ones. This is back from this is brand new, but it's sort of like going back to 1969 when El Primero got its name because they were racing against, I think, Dubois de Praz, and they were trying to get the first one out, and so they put one out and called it El Primero, which means the first. That's where its name came from. It was later then picked up by the Daytona and used, and so it's got a really interesting history. But the original one was the El Primero was by Zenith. Now, the thing about this one is a little unusual and something I'm not crazy about. I prefer sort of slower frequencies, lower frequencies. This one has a frequency of 36,000 semi-oscillations per hour. In other words, that's 5 hertz. It has a central chronograph hand, 12 hours at 12-hour hand at 6 o'clock, and then a 30-minute one at 3 o'clock. And then at 9 o'clock, there's the small seconds that they have for your chronograph, I believe. $9,000. That's another thing too. If you look at the prices of these, the Daytona's $15,000. It doesn't sound bad next to the $51,000 for the Singer. The thing is that you can't, you can order a Daytona. Getting one is another matter. The H. Moser is $40,000, and then the one by a Breitling is $10,000. So these prices are a little more reasonable. Now, one, I've talked about this watch I don't know how many times, and people are tired of hearing me, but the Parmigiani Tandem Metrograph, I think, is one of the most overlooked watches. This is the deal. This one is this watch has been at a place called the Watch Outlet, and they've been trying to sell it, and I don't know why they've been having a hard time selling, because it's such a good watch. It has the base movement is a Parmigiani Fleurier 315. And the base of that is a 331. Now, what they put the chronograph module is the Dubois de Praz, and that you can find in all kinds of chronographs. Now, the MSRP on this is $13,500, but they haven't made it for quite a while, and and this one has been for sale for around $5,950 for a long time. And they have some other ones saying, well, how come people there must be something wrong with it. There's not a thing wrong with it. It's an excellent watch. The thing about the movement design is by a real well-known, famous watchmaker named Michel Parmigiani. It's a great deal, I think, but what do I know? Okay, now another very, very famous chronograph is the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional. This one is listed at $7,000. In the context of these other ones, sound very reasonable. It has a manual wind, which I really like. It's at 3 hertz, 21,600 semi-oscillations per hour. It's got a coaxial escapement. All of these things are clicking. But then the Swatch went and made them put in a silicone hairspring. Yeah. The good thing about silicon is it's got about 15,000 Gauss, so you don't have a problem with magnetization. But a lot of really good hairsprings have also worked that out without having to rely on silicon. But that's my thing. 7,000 bucks. I think they have one with a 318 movement or 381 movement, something like that. That was the original one. And I think that they still use transitional metal in their hairspring. Now, one that I really liked. This one was just really beautifully done. All Longa und Sunda Odysseus chronograph. And what they did, they had a little graphic that they made, a little application. You could push things on the computer, and it would show how the thing worked. Very simple, very clear, very easy to work. 145,000 bucks. You know, oh, holy smoke! Nice one though. I mean, it really works well. Caliber L1 56.1. Beautiful watch. It really is. This is the kind of thing that is very clean. That's what I like about it. It's not cluttered with a lot of subdials. Okay, moving right along. Now, another German watch that I thought, I'll take a look at this. It's called the Hanhart. This one's called Hanhart 417 ES 1954 Flyback Panda 39. The Panda is those two black subdials on a white surface. It looks like a panda, I guess. Anyway, the Hanhart. Now, this was the most interesting thing about the Hanhart that I found when I was looking at it. It has a caliber Sellita AMT 5100M. Well, I was trying to find out about that movement because, on the Sellita list, I didn't see it. Apparently, Sellita owns this company called Manufacture AMT. And it's almost like a secret. They don't have a web page. They don't have anything, but they make, I guess, they make some of the movements. And one of the ones they make is called the AMT 5100M, which is their chronograph movement. Column wheel flyback movement, bicompax chronograph with central stop second. Now, there are two prices I have on this. First one is we'll call it the European price, €2,390, which includes the VAT, and the VAT can be hefty, like 25%. So that's that's a pretty good deal. In the U.S., where they don't have that, it was listed as 2,660. To me, this looks a very interesting deal. It really does, and I'm fascinated by the manufacturer AMT that sort of has its own aura of mystery. Now, another one, fairly famous brand is Tag Heuer Carrera Chronograph. Now, this one's got an ETA 7750 and it's automatic, 42 hours, 4 hertz. It's got something called a caliber 16 day date. All of the Tag Heuer, or most of them, have caliber, some like 8, 10, 16, something like that. And they're all ETA or Sellita movements. So anyway, it's sort of an interesting one. It's a day date chronograph. It has hours, minutes, and small seconds. Now, the thing of it is that brand new, it's listed as $4,800, but on the secondary market, after looking for, 4 or 5 minutes, I found one for over $1,000 less, $3,700. So it's a kind of thing, if it's, and it looks, you've got what people do with the chronograph, they're seen with sports and different kinds of sports for timing and motorsports and so forth, and pilots and all of that. Very sort of an active guy's kind of watch. I think that the Carrera was a race in Mexico, that famous race that they had. Okay, now here are the last two. Seiko Prospect automatic speed timer. Now, before I say much about it, let me say this, is that I was looking at these things and I saw a whole bunch of them. They were right in the 3,000, somewhere in there. And then I saw some for 700, and it was because I did a search on Seiko Prospect Speed Timer. Now, there's one that's called the Solar Speed Timer, and it's a quartz watch. And I think the Solar Speed Timer has like a solar battery, and you charge it up by putting it out in the sun, but it's a quartz watch. This one, the Automatic Speed Timer, is a automatic watch. It's a mechanical watch. Caliber 8R46, which is a Seiko movement. It's automatic, 45 hours, 4 hertz, central hours, central minutes. Here again, you have, and this one for $3,000. Very nice, vertical clutch, column wheel. It's a nice one. Now this particular one that I showed here, this one has, they almost look like those mines, they put it in the ocean. They floated, they got all those pokey things out of them. It's got great big ones, but for access to it, you can really get into that thing. It's got down at 6 o'clock, it's got a date. Now the final one, again, that I in my mind I hear, oh, here he goes again, Chaumet, I mean. I was looking for something else, and I kept running. I was just looking for a regular Chaumet Dandy, okay? Here is everything about the watch is just beautifully done. Everything except the movement, which is an ETA. And the way, the movement looks, you're not going to see it because it's got a solid back to it. But they have this incredible bracelets. I mean, Chaumet is like one of the top French jewelers. They made jewelers for sultans and Napoleon and all kinds of, and they're still just like this tip-top, first-rate jeweler. So it's like a chronograph that you could probably use as a dress watch. The Caliber ETA 7750 automatic, 28800. Nothing fancy about it. It's got a down at 6 o'clock. Now, this one, I don't think you're going to find too many new ones. There are probably some new ones out there, but they haven't made these in quite a while. But they are very well made. I was thinking of getting one of these just for the bracelet. I've got one watch with a metal bracelet, and that's a Parmigiani. They make it. Another kind that makes really fantastic bracelets. 40 millimeters. But this is something, if you say, well, I want a dress watch, and it'd be fun to have a chronograph. Man, I tell you, this would be hard to beat. Like I said, $1,500. It was on eBay. And you have a lot of them that are up and down around that price. The gold ones, of course, are going to cost you be a bit more on that. Anyway, so that's my take on sort of looking at chronographs other than the Daytona. There's nothing wrong with the Daytona. Don't get me wrong. It's just that sometimes people don't think beyond a certain level. If you're a connoisseur of chronographs, you're probably going to look at the Agengraph or in that Longa. But for the most part, and like I said, I'm not a big fan of chronographs, but you certainly have a great breadth and width of choices. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Some other ones you say, hey, what about this one? I always get these things. Well, I can't understand why you didn't include this. Okay, well, you can include it. So next time I'll include it. But in the meantime, I'll be playing with my Beauvais Monoretropont, my only chronograph that I have. Take care. This is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection, and this is an opportunity to subscribe if you like.